Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Reno County Commission Chambers for our commission meeting for November 22nd. I'll call the meeting to order. Our second item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll have a prayer by Pastor Tim Kraft of First Church of Christ.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for another Thanksgiving. Thank you for letting us live in this great nation we call the United States. And I find it absolutely amazing that you, the creator of the world, that you are interested in the smallest details of our life. What matters to us matters to you. And therefore I pray then that what matters to you matters to us. Lord, you care about this meeting. You care about our motives, our decisions, the spending of funds. Most of all, you care about the relationship we have in you. So we ask your blessing on this meeting, and that you would guide and direct our meeting so that it is full of wisdom, solutions, productivity, and respect for one another. This we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Again, welcome. I think we're going to get right into the agenda. Is there any items we need to add to the agenda?
I have none.
None. Hearing none, we'll move to the consent agenda, item 6. Randy, there's 2 planning case items on here. I don't think there's anybody here from the public on those 2.
Not that I saw.
Okay. And then there's a third that we moved to next week.
It's next week, yes, in business items.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the consent agenda items A through F.
There's a motion to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Sellers. Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Second by Commissioner Hurst. Any final discussion on the consent agenda?
Yes, I have a clarification on item 6F. As I read that this purchase of this transport bus, that's to be paid for by the state, and that's not our funds. Is that the way that is, Randy?
It's 100% reimbursement, yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
I have no other questions.
Commissioner Hurst?
I have none.
Hearing no further discussion, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst,
Yes.
Mr. Sellers,
Yes.
Mr. Friesen.
Yes. Okay, moving along, item 7A, Child Care Needs Assessment and Market Study. Randy, do you know who's presenting?
Yeah, Dr. Bradford Wiles is here from Kansas State University to give a presentation, and I believe Denise will then follow.
I'll start.
You'll start?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a kind of a remote or a clicker. Once the PowerPoint's up, that's right there.
Okay.
And just for the record, state your name and who you represent.
Okay. Denise Gilliland. I am the Director of Community Impact for the United Way of Reno County. I just wanted to take a moment and thank you guys for allowing us to present the market study. I know you've been waiting on it for a while. And also just thank those on the leadership team that helped make the market study possible. The Chamber has been at the table the entire time. Hutchinson Community Foundation, specifically Carrie Mayhew, Heather Faulkner with Abundant Life Child Care Center, Ashley Webster with Casito, Betsy McKinney with Fairfield Schools, and Beth Carlton with Child Care Link. So this has been a great team to work with, and of course, Dr. Bradford Wiles helped us with all of the research and the things that went into the market study, which he's going to deliver now.
Thanks, Denise.
Hi, I'm Bradford Wiles. I'm an associate professor and extension specialist at Kansas State University and K-State Research and Extension. So I just want to start by saying thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. And here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to cover a few things today. I'm just going to give a brief introduction. I'll talk a little bit about what our key results and findings are, in particular around some of the gaps between those with care and those looking for care. And then I have some recommendations that have emerged out of that research for the county and its partners, and then a few regarding actual ECE providers that will be really important, and then I have just some final thoughts and an opportunity for discussion if to answer questions if you'd like. So this is me. I've done a lot of graduate work, so I'll just kind of, there it is, and I'm actually still studying. So what we found is that the gap between what ECE providers make and yes, go ahead.
Excuse me a minute. Can everybody hear?
I
You need
can
to
speak
up
much
just a
louder.
little
Yeah,
bit,
sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we found was that the pay inequities between what our early childhood care and education providers make and the median income. So essentially, from our survey, the highest salary that any in-home provider would make was between $30,000 and $35,000. That is the highest. The median was between $20,000 and $25,000 a year. As you can imagine, that can be quite a strain on a family of four. And then what we also found was that for many parents, they would look for care, put their child in a spot, but it wasn't high quality, and oftentimes it wasn't licensed care. And so there was this issue of understanding that quality is important, and you get quality through licensure. One of the things that emerged a lot from our focus group, so the way that we conducted this study was we had an online survey that we collected data from 4 separate groups. We had those looking for care, those with care, comments from the general public around their understanding of the need for care, and then we also surveyed childcare providers. And across all of the 3, general public, those looking for care, and those who have care, there was a recognition that early care and education is a service to the community, right? So childcare providers provide the opportunity for early care and education for young children, which is critical, but they also provide the opportunity for adults to enter the workforce. And that recognition was across the board. However, their compensation does not keep up with what they contribute to the economy and to the community as a whole. And then one of the things that's really important is that, so I was asked to provide future projections. And what we're seeing is that in Reno County, you've got this band of older adults and younger families, and very little in between. And so what you're getting older adults aging out of the workforce and aging out of the early care and education workforce in particular. So that then creates a glut of a reduction in supply, and you've got younger families who want to move in, therefore increasing demand. And demand in Reno County is significant. And I will get to that in just a minute. So these early care and education providers have lower wages, and oftentimes they don't have benefits, right? So when I'm talking about their top income bracket, that's without benefits. That's without health care, without a 401k. And then here in Reno County, your median income level for everyone is about $10,000 less than the state of Kansas, which is somewhat surprising given that you've got a fairly urban location here in comparison to, let's say everything west of here, except for, maybe Dodge and Finney County, or, but that's about it. And so even more critically, in the early care and education survey, most of the people that we surveyed, actually not most, the median was 50 hours or more on average, with 25% of that being 60 or more hours a week for early care and education providers. So you can imagine the hourly wage starts to really decrease as the number of hours you work increases. And then in just since June, you've lost 1 center and 6 in-home providers, licensed centers, licensed in-home providers. And that then bumped up. This was just released on, I think, Tuesday of last week, maybe the week before. There's a current demand of 1,886 slots for childcare in Reno County. So take that in. That's clearly not meeting the need. So what we also see from the parent side is that the cost of quality care is so far beyond anyone's ability to pay, particularly if you have more than one child, right? If you can find infant care or toddler care, which, by the way, is very difficult for multiple reasons, but not the least of which is toddlers and infants just take more care. I mean, there was a proposal in the legislature to increase the ratio from 1:3 to 1:6, and I can just tell you that any one person trying to care for 6 infants is going to have a really hard time doing that. And as a function of that, the cost for one child in center-based care, is found that the gross income of those looking for care was between $30,000 and $35,000. And then looking for our ECE people, do they work off the clock? Yes, all of them do. Even those working in centers do. They rarely get benefits, and their out-of-pocket expenses, I just need to back up and say the gross income, these are for employees in centers. This is not in-home providers. And then they pay for all sorts of out-of-pocket expenses. They work off the clock. Essentially, again, they're getting overworked and underpaid. So when we think about the true cost of care, and you all can read, so I'll let you read these things. But what it comes down to is that everyone understands how important child care workers are. So this is not child care providers talking about themselves. There's one in there, but that's because she left because she didn't have insurance. And then you see those that are trying to keep up, and they're essentially their perspective through the community is very much their babysitters, which is certainly not the case. If you're getting licensed, excuse me, if you're getting licensed, you're not a babysitter. You are providing early care and education. Those are two wildly different things. And you know, there's this understanding in the community that something has to give. They can't keep making low wages and providing this service to the community because they're overworked and they're going to burn out, and you're seeing that. Again, since June, 6 home providers, a center. The amount of time, effort, and energy that goes into providing care is staggering. And I really want to point to this quote right there at the bottom. So, you know, when you're a parent, you're thinking, okay, I provide $3.50 per hour for each one of my kids, right? Well, that only includes, you know, that includes everything. That includes the food they're buying, the snacks, the arts and crafts, their, you know, all the infrastructure, the cribs, the playgrounds, all of those things, right? And not to mention the insurance that they usually carry for having in-home childcare or center-based care as well. So it's not like, you know, it appears that they're getting rich. Let me just be really clear. Nobody's getting rich from childcare. Nobody. So we see that there are these public perception issues, the lack of understanding of what it costs. All of our respondents talked about that. Now, this is the big kicker. In the difference between those who have care and those who are searching for care and income, those who have care added an additional $60,000 to their household, right? Why? Because the median level of income for those looking for care is a bachelor's degree, right? So they're able to earn if they can enter the workforce. So one of the questions we asked was, okay, so how much would you expect to make if you entered the workforce? The median was $60,000, right? So it's pretty clear that you've got this latent talent pool that isn't able to access the workforce, which creates a whole host of problems. So I talked a little bit about your projections. Your Hispanic population is growing, and I want to recognize here that despite our efforts, we really didn't get a strong response from Spanish-speaking families. And, you know, I will take some responsibility for that. It is difficult, but, you know, reaching Spanish-speaking families is a real boon to everyone, simply because, you know, flatly, they're going to be the workforce of your future. They're the fastest growing population in your county. And, you know, as you can tell, they have, you know, needs as well. So it's pretty easy to interpolate or extract the greater county to that specific population. So you've got some community health issues. Your health ranking is a little bit lower than similar locations. And then, of course, your child care facilities are in decline. So in order to attract and retain a younger workforce, you have to have child care. You have to have two things: housing and child care. Well, housing essentially will take care of itself as older adults age out and die, right? And again, you have this gap between essentially middle age. Families who already have housing is what I should say. So what really rises to the forefront? Early care and education. So now I'm going to get to the recommendations. I cannot emphasize enough that your greatest resource are your existing care and education providers. They are the ones who will keep you afloat until you can make larger systemic changes. You cannot continue a trend of family care providers leaving the workforce. They provide half of the care in Reno County. I want to emphasize that again. In-home licensed providers provide half of the total early care and education slots in your county. In fact, in rural areas, it is almost exclusively in-home providers. So they require support. It is a difficult job, particularly when you're faced with some of the challenges of rurality, and those communities depend almost exclusively on in-home providers. So supporting them is critical. The more of those you lose, the more you're going to essentially reduce your available workforce. And flatly, you're not providing a good platform for going into kindergarten. And we know that kids who enter kindergarten who come from preschool environments will do much, much better than their peers who have not. And I'm not talking about academically. I think I've told you before, the three things that I care about in early childhood are you learn to regulate your emotions, you learn to solve problems together, and you learn to get along with your peers, right? When you have preschool and early care and education, you learn those things early on. So what do I recommend? I think first, you need to essentially provide funding to existing providers to get them up to a living wage so that then they can earn the money that they are already earning, which is, again, $20,000 to $25,000, right? We pay people more to watch parked cars than we pay early care and education providers. Several of the respondents in our survey indicated that they, from early care and education providers, indicated that they had often thought of going to work at Brahms or any other retail position because they have set hours, they get benefits, and they'll make more money than they do right now. And I can tell you, they'll be a lot less tired. I don't know when the last time any of you have cared for young children is, but I can tell you this. In my lifetime, the most tired and most sick I've ever been was working in an early childhood classroom. Right? I mean, it is, they're little petri dishes, right? I love them, but they bring a lot of sickness, and the hours are so hard. And they demand attention, right? And so recognizing what their job entails and what they're doing for you is critical. I also would really encourage some innovative approaches to early care and education. One of the things that I've presented to our providers is looking at forming co-ops. Those provide opportunities for, again, those benefits, the insurance, and they can do some bulk ordering as well as some really interesting arrangements around taking vacations and those kinds of things. So I really would encourage supporting that and other types of arrangements that can further advance your community. But I want to be really clear. In my view, there's a short term, which is support your providers right now, and then there's a longer term, which is building these systems to assist. One of the things that emerged in our work is that oftentimes agreements among organizations in the community are handshake agreements or breakable, and that I would recommend that those arrangements really be put in place formally so that both parties are protected. I've seen this a few times, and it just supporting that would be really critical for you moving forward. And then the most important part, for me at least, is that I've gotten you to this point. But you need someone who is experienced and has expertise in community development, who can move these results forward, to work with providers and community partners, to organize and drive this forward. In these coalitions that are formed, in the K-Ready Coalition and all of them, it's all done as part of another job. And my experience has been, if it's part of another job, it gets the attention that part of your job does. But if someone has a job dedicated to moving this forward, you'll see a lot more progress. And in fact, in communities where they have those positions, you see a dramatic change in progress and increase in capacity. And sorry, I would very much recommend that this be in an organization that is essentially neutral to your community, so that any social or historic concerns would not be part of that. I think, this is, I didn't just come in and suddenly there was this child care issue. There's been a lot of history here, and so, I would really highly encourage you to think about putting a position in at the most neutral location that you can. One of the most important elements is, again, reaching those Hispanic families. But something that's been really intriguing to me is that here in Reno County, the public funding has been focused almost exclusively within the school districts. School districts are allowed and in fact encouraged to partner with existing early care and education providers using public funds. So essentially, they can provide funding to existing for-profit early care and education licensed providers to care for kids as part of the pre-K initiative. Your school districts have chosen not to do that. When that happens, it makes two things happen. The first is it only operates on the school calendar. And then the second is the way that early care and education providers make the most money is through those preschoolers. Infants and toddlers aren't going to do it. They cost a lot of money to care for, right? Now, there's a huge demand, but what you're seeing is kids getting taken out of the preschool, the early care and education facilities that they've been in since infancy. And if I know anything about early childhood, which I'd like to think I know something, transitions are not good for them, right? So that's a problem. Plus, you're operating on now a 9-month calendar. So when the summer comes, you've got this huge need for early care and education. And by the way, breaks, professional development days, all of these things that happen on a school calendar. I would really recommend that the school districts reassess how they're spending their pre-K dollars. Furthermore, there's a real opportunity to expand Head Start in your community, and I've already been working with folks at 308 to connect them and get that moving forward. It's just not serving as many children as their capacity could, and certainly the need exists here beyond flatly anything any single Head Start could do. A key piece of the puzzle is not just public funding, it's private funding. So every business in town benefits to a certain extent. Bigger businesses benefit more, of course, but What's really cool is that the state has now enacted some tax breaks and tax incentives, not breaks, tax credits, right? So doesn't matter if you owe taxes or not, you get it. So I would really encourage outreach to the business community to encourage things like flexible spending accounts for early care and education. When they do that, in the first year, they will get up to $90,000 back, up to $45,000 back on a $90,000 investment. So they'll get 50% back for every dollar they spend, up to $45,000 that they'll get back. Every subsequent year, they'll get 30% back. Not only that, they save on those payroll taxes, 8% for every dollar they put in. Well, 8% total. And your employees also get that money tax-free. So if you figure your employees are getting, let's say 30% tax, right? Maybe 25. They're getting that tax-free, so that's 25 cents on every dollar that they'll get back. So there are some real opportunities for businesses to enact support. I can't tell you how many times I've seen across different issues in the United States where funding like this comes in and it really helps for a little bit. I would encourage you to start making plans now for filling these gaps over time. I think what you will see, in fact, data across the country demonstrates very clearly that your businesses will benefit in a way that they would likely be willing to do some filling of this funding after it expires, simply because they'll see the benefits in productivity, reduced absenteeism, ability to recruit and retain talent. So I would very much encourage you to think about how you can do that. And again, a community development specialist would be able to really work that through and move that forward. Getting back to a little bit of the results of our survey as well, there's a stigma attached to licensed home care, and I will just simply say that in my experience, licensed home care is not inferior to licensed center care. You have good centers and you have not so good centers. You have good in-home care and not so good in-home care, but typically their setting is not predictive of that. And then the final element of that is, if you're providing care, you deserve support, regardless of setting. And so what there's some tables out that provide funding support based on years of service, based on number of kids, et cetera. So there's a really nice formula to bring early care and education providers up to a living wage that, again, supports you. While I care very much about early care and education providers, I also care that they don't leave the workforce, therefore driving down the entire community's ability to thrive economically. So the final element is that it's not all on you, right? There are some opportunities for early care and education providers to advance what they do. Child care cooperatives are really useful. And again, if you needed more information on that, I'm certainly happy to provide that. But in addition, child care centers oftentimes have professional development, CPR trainings, et cetera, that can help reduce those rates. So currently, there's a bit of a schism between centers and in-home providers, and I would really encourage them formally to work together and to, in fact, incentivize that work. And then, that public funding piece, if ever there was a place that you could make a huge dent, rapidly, it would be being able to use public funding that's currently going to schools in the community. I think the decision to keep it in-house has been, don't get me wrong, they did the best they could with what they had. I want to be really clear there. It was not insidious by any stretch. But there's an opportunity here to switch gears and to build out the support, and again, give all year-round care. There you go. And I want to emphasize that third bullet point. When people are working together, it drives this work forward much more. So incentivizing that collaboration is gigantic. One of the things that other communities have done is provide funding for early care and education workers to attend the meetings, right? Because for every early care and education worker, if you have the meeting on a Saturday, great, but they're generally going out and getting their food for the next week, et cetera, and so it becomes really hard for them to attend, and if you do it during the week, well, they're losing money, right? And so I just would really encourage the support for those coalitions and their ongoing attendance. The early care and education partners want to advance their field. But right now there isn't so much the formal support that could go a long way. All right, so I just want to acknowledge the partners that helped. Many of them are here. Denise is here, Heather's here, Betsy is here, and Ashley is here, but Beth and Carrie were instrumental.
Carrie's here.
Oh, I didn't see Carrie. Hey, there she is. Sorry, Carrie. Great. So good. And then I wanted to also acknowledge some of the folks in the local communities that helped us. So Lauren Meters and Deborah Lawrence, who's in Turon, the Beal Public Library and the Hutch Public Library, where we conducted a few focus groups, and then my team there. And then the most important of all, the people who participated in our focus groups and who responded to our survey. So I'm open for questions.
Commissioner Sellers?
He always asks me first. I'm not sure why. Dr. Wiles, thank you for your presentation. And I read the full report that was provided to the commission. And brief answers are appropriate. Why is the situation worse in Reno County than other places that you've studied? Is it because our median income is on the low side?
Yes, and the ability for early care and education providers to earn a living wage as a consequence is part of that.
But doesn't that happen in every community, that they're low rate wages?
Yes, it does happen in every community. However, it appears in Reno County your providers are older and are getting burnt out, and there are opportunities for entry-level positions that will pay them more. In other communities, they don't have that same entry-level opportunities that pull people away.
Okay, my second question is, I believe you stated that part of the solution here is with the school system to provide earlier education opportunities for, I assume, younger children. But yet, I think you also stated that presents a huge problem of only being a 9-month or 8-month solution.
Yes.
Could you explain
Yes.
that
So
better?
I'm sorry. What I am encouraging is the school system to use their funding to compensate existing early care and education providers who provide year-round care, because they are not only allowed to do so under the funding, but encouraged to do so because of this exact reason. So what I'm trying to say is use that public funding in the private sector, which they are not only allowed but encouraged to do. Funding for early care and education in the school is a short-term fix to a long-term problem. The long-term solution is to distribute that money across the community.
Okay, I have two more quick questions. On your written document, and I think also in the slide before, go back one more. Well, right there, in two different places, you say make plans to replace short-term funding support with long-term sustainability. And you make that twice on there, so I guess that was an important point to you.
Yeah, it very much is. Yep.
To me, and I don't pretend to be even remotely understanding of the complexity of this issue, but that seems like to me the biggest issue that we're to face is we've got money now to help short-term funding, but how do you use that money so that 2 years from now or 3 years from now we don't have the same problem that we have today?
So, because you want brief answers, I'll give you this. A community development specialist is going to be able to start to put that in place. What it entails is essentially a ramping up of private funding as the public funding, as your current funding declines.
And can you show communities that have been successful in this
Yeah, absolutely.
private funding, business funding?
Yep. So in Wichita County, they now, which is one of the most remote counties you'll find, right? It's it's not quite in the Mountain Time Zone, but it's one county over from the border with Colorado. They built a child care facility funded by the community that is in operation now. And again, having a community champion there, the extension agent drove that forward. So they're operating on private donations and especially support from the businesses in town because of that. So another element of that, though, is if you add these flexible spending accounts to the businesses in town, you'll have a much higher ability to pay because families are getting that 25 cents on the dollar back, and businesses are recouping half of what they put in, so that there's an increased opportunity to pay, so that early care and education workers can increase their fees to compensate.
Okay, my final question, and I appreciate the patience of my colleagues.
Oh, of course.
Enforcement, you have a significant paragraph that starts out, enforcement of KDHE regulations received an inordinate amount of attention during the focus groups.
Yes.
We've heard this before. How do we make our legislative group understand that the state has a role in helping the solution of what I'm hearing? It takes too long. We can't understand their rules. It's too complex. How do we solve that issue? That's got to be a statewide issue.
It is. It's somewhat of a statewide issue. I do want to say that I have done this kind of work in multiple communities across Kansas. Never, ever have I seen every group of respondents say something about this exact issue. I've had providers complain. Complain is not the right word. I've had providers voice their frustrations. I've never seen it in parents looking for care, for example. Right? They probably shouldn't even know about that. So there's clearly an issue here. And flatly, through my work, I saw essentially a zero tolerance policy that was very much gatekeeping rather than facilitating. So you ask, how do I solve that? The first thing is KDHE contracts with local health departments to do the surveying. Working with the local health department and KDHE to really move that. So essentially, making sure that they are supervising their employees to make sure that it is not this punitive, overbearing, flatly.
So
we
you
want
feel
people.
that bureaucracy can be overcome?
Yes. So one thing we all should know is KDHE has had a lot of resignations, a lot of out moving for multiple different reasons that are still unclear to me. So yeah, there's a huge backlog, and then there's another element in that there's nobody like me at KDHE. Like in most other states, they have people with doctorates in early childhood development in those positions, and at KDHE that doesn't exist. And so there's not an opportunity for guidance to move that needle. I do want to also say that there was also some complaint about the regulations, but flatly, those aren't going to change. And if they do, it's not going to have much of a bearing on economic development, right? And they are there to protect our children. If they weren't there, you'd have kids in cages, and people could make a lot of money, but there'd be kids in cages.
I just want a clarifying
Go ahead.
item. When you were responding to Commissioner Sellers' last question, you said something like, "Nowhere have you ever seen." Can you repeat that again?
Sure, yeah. In all the communities in which I have done this work, in Kansas and Nebraska, I've never, ever seen the kind of feedback about KDHE across all the different groups, right? So the 4 groups: child care providers, those looking for care, those with care, and the general public. And each and every one of them talked about the heavy-handedness of KDHE. And that is staggering. I mean, I need to tell you, usually KDHE comes up only in the providers' meetings, and it's those kinds of, it's not the heavy-handedness, it's the, the bureaucracy components that Commissioner Sellers was talking about, the lags and those things, which are critical. But here, it's the enforcement. That's what the most important element of those discussions has been. And it is shocking, to say the least.
Sure.
Well, I thank you for your work and putting all this together and coordinating things. By way of just information, Leota is in Wichita County, correct?
Yeah, that's the
So
location.
that's the main.
Yep.
area
I think their population is 2,500. Yeah. But there are other examples in Edwards County, in Marion County, in Pottawatomie County as well.
I noticed Pottawatomie County came up with some to these things. The sustainability is the one thing that we have limited. I think Commissioner Sellers has talked about that a little bit, and is how we get this done after we use the ARPA funds to do this. Where are you seeing this? Just came up in my mind. Where are you seeing the percentage of I guess I'm saying the money, rather than building new and using a lot of funds for facility improvement and finding a place, where are you seeing, and how does that fit into the overall structure? Is most of that due to our rules and regulations?
I don't think so, no. One of the comments from one of the focus groups that we had that really stuck with me was there was a gentleman there from an elder care facility. And this was in the general public group. And he simply said, if you want to talk about regulations, I live regulations all day long. And are they difficult? Yes. We're still able to operate. So the regulations are somewhat limiting. However, what's most limiting is the community's ability to pay and the lack of private-public partnership to support those. So when you think about the percentage, for me, I think first and foremost you invest in your existing providers just to keep them doing the work. I mean, you know, the rate of burnout is extreme here. And there is a need for newer facilities. There's no question. One of the issues with doing that is making sure that the talent isn't then poached from other providers already, such that then you're just essentially moving talent from one place to the other without having an opportunity for replacement. So investing in new facilities as well as a talent pipeline or making it a living wage will attract the talent that you need. That's really fundamental.
And one thing I was interested in, because I've always, since started this, has been the public-private partnerships. So, and you had some groups that included employers.
Sure.
What is their thoughts with regards to putting in some funds with regards to not having that person miss a day or two a month because of not being able to find someone for care? How have you seen a lot of input from the employers with regard to the potential for public-private?
So anecdotally, yes, I have not studied it extensively, but the Economic Development Board, particularly in Potawatomi County, has voiced their satisfaction with and they are all business owners. Caterpillar is in Potawatomi County. They have talked openly about the benefits that they're receiving. So, but as a scientist, as a social scientist, I haven't studied it extensively to be able to give you sort of the same kind of figures that I have in the report there. So it takes all of us. I really think that once your community sees the benefit of having providers with a living wage and the results that brings to people who can now work, again, there's, you know, you add $60,000 to your household on average if you have care. And so I think you'll get the benefit of high quality workforce with the reduced absenteeism and increased productivity. I mean, Mr. Friesen, I imagine I know you're an employer. I imagine you see this all the time, right? And I mean, I can just say, when I worry about my kids' care, it distracts from my ability to do the work that I need to do, and I've missed because of it, and I'm not unique. And so I think you'll start to really see that. I would encourage you, this community development professional that I recommend, to implement some of those measures with HR departments to really categorize those so that as you move to replace this funding, you can make it very clear.
I'm going to a little devil's advocate on this.
Yeah, please.
If I'm going to increase my household income $50,000 to $60,000, then I could be able to afford that additional child care. I should be able to. Okay.
Yeah, if you can find it.
Talk about that. If I can find it, yes.
Yes.
So that's part of that sustainability.
It is very much so.
Program that fits into that. If I'm able to and want to, instead of staying home, and go utilize my education the way I want to, no matter what it is, then I can therefore don't need subsidized.
Yes, to a certain extent. However, recall that the subsidizing is to keep your early care and education professionals stable. Without it, those professionals, those potential workers won't be able to enter the workforce.
But what I'm saying is, then the wages of the caregivers can be elevated due to that. but also I'm getting my tax credits back.
That's the big part.
And that's a
right.
huge thing to
That's
me,
a big
is tax
part.
credit.
Yeah, so it has to be both and, right? The corporations need to be able to invest in their people and get 50 cents on the dollar back by doing that. So yes, those are all part of the sustainability picture, absolutely. I mean, I think that what you're saying makes sense. Bear in mind that that is, of course, the average. There will be those who make much less, right?
Understand that, 30
Yeah,
versus
so,
90.
but certainly, that's all part of the sustainability puzzle.
Okay.
Places that we've seen real sustainability are when organizations like the Chamber of Commerce essentially work with businesses to provide funding to the community, to a community fund, who then distributes that to providers to raise their baseline, and then they continue to charge the same amount because the workers there, pardon me, aren't making the additional 60,000. They're making, another 40,000 or 30,000.
Yeah, one more question.
Yeah,
then
sure.
I'll let Daniel, someone else. There was a fourth statement on that on recommendations, that on the first one was innovative pilot test. And I don't know what all that might involve, but is that something that the state would go along with?
Oh, that is a really good question. So one thing I actually neglected to mention here in terms of existing funding is currently the Kansas Department of Commerce, for the first time, has an opportunity to fund facilities for childcare. Okay? That is very rare. Usually funding does not allow any capital improvements. It requires a 25% match, but a community like Hutchinson can go up to $750,000 of state funding. So for that, absolutely. And then in terms of matching as you go forward, I don't know of any funding at the moment, but there's a real acknowledgement post-pandemic that this work requires support. So I wish I could answer more forcefully, but looking at the landscape, there's a real acknowledgement of the need for early care and education across Kansas.
Done. For now.
Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate all of the work from all of the stakeholders. I just want to make sure I understand, I always try to figure out why natural economics can't solve this issue. And so you're saying we have a low supply of providers in high demand. Is it just if we have a low supply, are you saying we can fix that supply issue with higher wages?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And if I may, it's not a free market because of the regulations that are important, by the way. You'll never hear me advocate for looser regulations in early childhood, ever. They are in place for what I would term obvious reasons.
So you're saying because of the regulations injected by the government, it manipulates the market and therefore it can't work freely on its own.
Right. So if it could, you could have 60 kids in cages, right? But I don't think that's in anyone's best interest. So it's definitely not your classic, free market principles. And again, for good reason. It's not. I don't want to disparage the regulations that are in place.
No,
And-
I think we need to start doing that.
Great.
actually.
And ours are very much in line with most other states.
Regarding regulations, back to your point of it was shocking related to the feedback you were given from our community. KDHE is empowered by the state to administer those regulations. But you said they're contracted. Who are they contracted to?
They contract with the local health departments who hire and supervise their KDHE, their employees, yes.
This sounds self-inflicted, like we are the problem?
I would not say that. But if you will, that's fine.
But
No, I
you-
mean,
like,
what I
you
mean
made
is.
you
yeah.
made the observation
Yeah.
that we are perhaps, like, not you're not saying this. The respondents are saying that we are one of the worst counties to operate a child care facility in.
Absolutely.
And you're also saying that Reno County is the one administrating those regulations.
Yes. The personnel in place, and I do want to add, the orientation regarding enforcement, right? So let me give you a few examples. People are now reported on the state system because the grass near their swing set, where the pole meets the ground, was not trimmed. That's not something that,
It's not kids in cages.
right. That is something that in most other counties, they would say, fix this and move on. And they would note it. And if it wasn't fixed maybe the next time or the time after that, okay. But several of the providers mentioned getting cited because, and I quote, nobody's perfect, end quote. Now that is not facilitating. That is gatekeeping. And in fact, in my view, that shows a complete contempt for the work that the early care and education professionals are doing. Are there those who run afoul? Absolutely. Should they be cited? Absolutely. Without question. I just think that it's been, I don't think, our respondents indicated that it's been extraordinarily heavy-handed and the orientation really needs to shift. I can tell you at the state level, KDHE is really working on that shift as well. It's just how they're able to convey that and, again, the personnel in the field.
Okay. I think I just got to move on because that is
Yeah.
extremely frustrating. Like I just got to like.
Yeah, I understand.
We'll come back to that. Definitely, I think this commission needs to look into that immediately. But as far as benefit pools and cooperatives, that sounds interesting. Can we leverage, like we have a large employee base already, a large benefits system already. Can we leverage, have you heard of that before, where we can leverage our benefits?
Yeah,
for healthcare
absolutely.
providers?
So it really depends on how far a business is willing to go. So you can essentially contract with childcare providers and then as a function of that, pay benefits and wages out of yours. You can, so if you're, particularly if you want to have like an on-site one for your employees, you can make those people employees. They would reap all the benefits. But you can also partner with early care and education providers in the community where you can offer those as part of your contract with them. So like for many contractors, they will negotiate to have benefits as part of that contract. So that there are multiple different ways to do that. And yeah, I mean, I will say that would be a huge boon. So many early care and education providers are leaving to work at places like Brahms and McDonald's because they at least have benefits. They at least have some match for a 401k.
Right, like, and like we need to take care of our kids before we eat a cheeseburger, right? Like, The business tax breaks, I think Commissioner Hurst mentioned that. Is there like just a paper?
Yeah, so I got to say, the Kansas Department of Revenue was supposed to come out with their rule in July. It's still not out yet. I have the early language. What I provided you is just sort of the overview of it, and that was put out. But the rule is imminent.
Okay.
But yes, I believe you have a flyer in your packet that outlines sort of the basics that I talked about there. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Yeah. Right there.
Well, okay. This is helpful. We ought to just, I mean, we have a communication specialist. She can get this out there. Like, we ought to start distributing this, and the chamber should too.
And Mr. Friesen, if I may,
Please.
Kansas State Research and Extension is also working on those, both for businesses and for consumers.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, to your point on public-private partnerships, I think that's extremely important, and I've always been an advocate of leveraging private funds if we feel like we must spend public money on this. And I think the chamber has all been challenged here to, find interest from our private industry to. It's not that hard to fund this position that you've suggested we need, this community development. What'd you call it? A community development
Specialist?
specialist. And I fear placing it here within the Reno County government would kind of get it just lost in just government. I think the private industry groups should fund that. I mean, I think we can definitely support and provide resources as well, but I can speak for my private company. We would love to participate in an effort, and I think a lot of employers understand this is a real issue that limits our ability to connect with a larger workforce. There's a lot of great workers that are just at home, and they may want to work and they can't because of this issue. So I think the chamber should get to work on this issue with us. I think there's plenty of private funding available for that. I don't know what the other commissioners think. I think we ought to, this just came to me, I think we ought to have Sandra just start doing a video series, just go out to a provider and have them talk about, what their problems are from a regulation perspective. I had that idea until I realized that we're going to be talking about ourselves potentially. But I think we ought to spotlight it for the state. We've been talking about this for a while, and I don't know why we can't use our resources to spotlight what the problems are in regulations. I don't know what you guys think of that, but maybe we can take that to Randy process. Just a second. I've got a lot of notes here.
Yeah.
I think that's all the questions I have.
I've got one
Commissioner
more.
Hurst, go ahead.
Maybe more comment, but a possibility. When we talk about, you mentioned this, that there's no benefits, health insurance,
savings retirement.
IRA, savings, retirements. And you also mentioned the school participation with the giving up basically the early ed and putting that funds into private early ed or private childcare and education system. With that, is there any potential to utilize part of those funds that might be going in there in some type of combination for health insurance and something like that? Is there methods that can be utilized there? And we also have other, like the Chamber has a program with health insurance, Farm Bureau has a program, other independents do, to, in case of a co-op or a joining together of these different child care agencies within the county, that couldn't be something that could be utilized?
So
If there was some kind of a collaboration, some type of group that represented them,
yeah, so to your first question, I don't know the details enough of that funding to know whether they can earmark it for insurance. A community development specialist would. However, yes, the answer is there are multiple different strategies for supporting early care and education providers with those benefits outside of their own entities. Yes, absolutely. A co-op, I really highly recommend that for the early care, the in-home early care and education providers. It provides them with multiple different opportunities to build that kind of a structure.
I'm having difficulty trying to hire any more people, but within our tax basis that we have. But since you brought this child care special or the community development specialist up, I know there are several counties that have community development people, but to find one qualified, where do one sit with regards to that?
Well, the fact is, you have to pay for talent. This isn't a $40,000 a year job. I would place it between $80,000 and $100,000. And if it were me, I would contact the folks at the Community Development Degree Program at K-State. They're fine, and ask them who they would recommend. And get, they keep track of their graduates and where they are, and so I would start there. Of course, Kansas State Research and Extension has community vitality specialists. They have a network as well that I would tap into to identify potential talent. But flatly, in order to get someone to come, you got to pay them.
Well, I think that's true of anything.
Exactly. They've got their work cut out for them here. I will say that the leadership, the support of the community stakeholders that I've interfaced with is all moving in a very positive direction. There are very few laggards. You have the capacity here to really make some positive change.
Thank you, Dr. Wiles, and all those that have participated, all of the stakeholders. This is very beneficial to Reno County. I think it hits exactly on what we've identified as the top priority for the county. I would encourage all the stakeholders. This is just the start. We really don't have. I think we've kind of confirmed a lot of what we already knew and received a lot more information. There's not a plan that can be acted on yet here.
Right, there are a few things. I have provided the table for supporting early care and education providers immediately now.
Okay.
So based on years of experience and current wages, if you haven't received that, I will get that to you.
It's in here. But
okay.
Does it, I didn't spend a lot of time on that table. Does it have an actual dollar amount?
Yes.
Like total?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's going, And what is that number?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's per provider, so I haven't extrapolated out, but I can certainly do that math for you.
Well, yeah, I think like we need
The budget.
plans of action.
Yeah, that's
And like,
what I was
you
gonna
know,
ask
we,
for.
we can solve world hunger here today if we had enough money, right? But
Right,
we
right,
can't
right.
do that.
Yeah.
And so, if you can tell us, like, these are action steps that we need to take
Gladly.
immediately, I think we would appreciate those for sure.
Gladly.
Okay.
Commissioner, I think we got one school system out there that's kind of real small school system that's kind of making things happening out there. So maybe that's something that could be almost a pilot.
Absolutely, and I want to.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I want to really highlight that. When you find people who are doing things well, which you have in your community, they are your greatest assets. They are able to provide that kind of guidance, to scale those things to other communities, to be those champions that will bring others along with them. So again, thinking about how I sort of recommended the different buckets, supporting those novel pilot programs that are emerging from those who are doing things well without the formal supports yet. With formal supports, they really make a huge difference. So I would, again, really invest in those existing resources that are promising.
Now I've done, for sure.
And when do you think you could come back with some action items?
Well, let's see. This is Thanksgiving break. I would say I could get that to you by the end. How about the beginning of the second week of December?
Sounds great.
Somebody write that down for me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's enough people here. I think they'll
Yeah,
hold you accountable.
I will have slept since then, so yes.
Thank you again. Thank you for everyone here. I know everybody didn't get a chance to talk, but I assume you've spoken for them today, and thank you for all this work. Looking forward to continuing to act on it.
Thank you.
Item 7B is the clerk's annual report.
Morning, Commissioners. Donna Patton, Reno County Clerk. You have my report in front of you. There's just a few things on there, but I would like to thank Sheriff Campbell, Mike Plank and his staff, and Stormy and Nikki from the Maintenance Department for all their help during our election. With the help of the appraisers in the Maintenance Department, we saved a day's rental on a U-Haul trailer because they went to the fairgrounds and helped us set up and tear down, and that was immensely helpful. And those three department heads paid for that out of their own budget. We did not have to pay for that. We have approximately 170 board workers, which we couldn't do the election without. We had a 49.8% voter turnout. So our audit was perfect. It's done. Jen and I are getting ready to go back to the office and get the abstract sent to the Secretary of State's office, and then the election will be done.
Questions for Donna?
Well, it's Donna's report, but I'd like to acknowledge that during my term as county commissioner, I think the clerk's department's one of the most proactive groups that I've worked with, and I've very much enjoyed working with all the people in Donna's department.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that.
Very excellent staff, and they get the things done that they're required to do.
I certainly couldn't do this without the staff that I have, that's for sure.
Commissioner Harris, got any questions?
Very efficient, lots of work. Thanks everybody who participated in the whole
Thank you.
election.
It takes a village, that's for sure.
Yeah, good work. There's really just, it's good, and certainly nothing to complain about, and it's nice to just be able to rely that things are going to be handled well, and we just come to sign her name, move on. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I do agree, like your culture in your department is very, very good, and it seems like everybody's really happy. And so I appreciate
Is there
what
any
you've done.
Halloween candy left?
There is
Is
actually.
there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be over.
We got a cake delivered to us yesterday.
That's part
so
of the secret sauce. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Next up is Register of Deeds. It wasn't getting power, was it? It's not getting power, is it?
I'm getting power.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time today. Do you have any questions about the report that was in the packet that I provided? I'll just hit a couple key notes here. Right now in the Register of Deeds, we're focused on our plat map relocation. We're able to acquire 2 new plat cabinets that will consolidate some space in our office, and we get a tax credit for recycling the old, not a tax credit, but we get a $2,000 credit for recycling the old cabinets. And we're moving the Mylars of the original plats down to underground vaults and storage, because we don't really need to keep the Mylars and copies of the plats. And we also discovered that we have school records on the 5th floor. Back in the day, they would file old school records for the Register of Deeds. They're really important to genealogists, and they're part of our history. So we are trying to find a space to place those. I don't want to send them down to underground vaults and storage if I plan to have them digitized in-house, because that'll just cost more money. So we're trying to find a space where we can store them. It's a challenge. We'll figure it out. As far as the digitizing project, I'd like to give a shout out to IT, in particular Corey Harrison, who is our document specialist. Just for our office, he's digitized almost 250,000 documents, 226,794. That's over a span of 508 books. He's gotten more than half of our archive digitized, so we are well on our way to getting 100% digital registry. And once we do that, we can focus on providing them online for our customers so they can be more self-efficient, getting their own records instead of relying on staff and staff time to do that for them. And we're looking for a new records management software, something that's going to provide our customers more features and tools to use our records and utilize them, and also bring in revenue for the county. As I mentioned before, we'd like to get these records online, but we will be providing those records for a subscription fee, and that will bring in revenue for the county. And just once again, IT has been very instrumental in that as well, finding us a new software. Mike and I have been working really close together. I think we're about to wrap this up. We're going to do a demo for a software next week, I think. And as far as our digital archive and preservation associate, they've been working out really well. That was a part-time position you approved last year. And we're just doing the best we can with them. And they're helping us out a lot. Is there any questions?
I have one or two. One, do you have like a formal data backup plan and disaster plan for all of the data
Yes.
that's now digital?
Yes. Everything that is getting digitized right now is also being backed up on a server, one of the servers, I believe. Mike might be here. Mike would be the best person to explain this. That server is protected, and there's also microfilm backups of everything that gets digitized as well.
Okay.
And those are stored in underground vaults and storage.
Well, I would encourage you, and maybe you could throw it in your next report that you do for us. I think you do those, what, 4 times monthly? Okay. In the next few months, like, just randomly audit a few things and,
Sure.
and ask IT to see if they can actually recover them for you. Like, there's a big difference between, like, I don't know, like, over my years in technology, you don't know how many times people say what you just said, or we're confident it's all backed up. And it hasn't been backing up for, like, you know, for an example, the backup stopped 6 months ago or something.
Sure.
So I would appreciate in the next quarter or so just showing that you've done just a trial audit of your backup.
I think that's a great idea. I can do that for you.
Thanks. I had another question, but I forgot it. I'll shoot you an email if I remember.
Okay.
Thanks for your report.
Thank you.
Next up, treasurer. Welcome, Brenda.
Thank you. Brenda Coates, I'm your treasurer. I did not list all the duties that we do. I have done that, I think, before for the commission, this particular commission. I did voice some concerns. Our staffing is an issue. We are having people, something similar to every county that I'm hearing about in the state, is that those front clerks, that is really not a starting position. That is a position that requires knowledge of all the statutes from Department of Revenue. It's all of our guidelines that we must follow that the state requires to do title work, etc. Applies to commercial vehicles, regular vehicles, even down to renewals. So, when you bring somebody in, then you immediately start trying to train them. And when you train them, and we have had people that have been there for 20 years that are still having to ask questions because you train them, and then there's new legislation that is passed, or somebody interprets the statute differently, so then you change your training. You have to go back and retrain. So that position, they really have to be on their toes. The state audits us. We never know when we're gonna get audited. We just get a notice that they're gonna make a county call, and we sit on the phone with the audit team and go over our ratings. I'm pleased to say that Reno County is one of the top counties. We were the top, but we're at 94%, which is very, very good. Commercial, doing the commercial business, we are the highest county in the state. Doesn't mean we can't improve, but it's just a lot of work. And a lot of the offices, like I said, through the state, they're facing the same problem. To get those people in, to go through all that training, have to go through all that detail, and then deal with the public. And there's several of our new girls that already, I can watch if there's a problem, either I go up or the motor vehicle supervisor will go up. And when those people leave, clerk takes her glasses off, goes to the bathroom. Well, I can't keep people that are subjected to that kind of treatment from the general public. Most of us, we get along fine with them. You have to build kind of a rapport. And we're really trying to make a team effort to make those people understand we know if they don't come through the door, we don't have jobs. So we're grateful that they're there. We want to do it right, but it is a problem to do that. We had some open positions. We are going to promote from within, and that's going to again leave at least 2 clerk positions. But in the meantime, while we are promoting within and training, we all can fill in with that front line. So there should be no disruption in the service we're providing to the people coming to the counter. But that is a concern. It really is. My other concern is on paper, the budget looks wonderful. 67% overall expenses, but here's the catch. You've got your tax statements, what they're gonna charge for that comes in yet. You have the lockbox, $10,000 that we have to pay for that. I've got a $12,000 and some dollar publication fee that's gotta be paid yet, so I've got some pretty good expenses still sitting out there. Unfortunately, and I did bring the paperwork if you want to see it, our publication fees for the delinquent real estate, we used to have an insert. I'm sure you all have seen one. It was just an inserted pamphlet, went in the paper. It cost us about $1,500 for that. Now that it is processed through a different company, that bill is almost $13,000, which I could not have guessed it would do that. Postage. The postage went, and I've got those papers if you want to see them. We were at like $13,000 some dollars last year, and the year before that, pretty close. They're over $20,000 now. Well, I don't have any choice. I have to send the tax statements out. So that's going to be another hit on the budget that you're going to see at the end. And I will tell you now, I will probably be over budget. So, I don't know what else you need to know about that. We try to maintain a healthy relationship with all the other departments. In fact, we got the cooperation from the clerk that we put a sign on the ballot box that says tax payments, tag renewals. This is our high season for the tax payments. That will be available. It locks, so it's secure. And we go out every day and check it, pull stuff in, bring it in, process it. But that will be available, and we're letting the public know that that is available. So if they want to drop off a payment, a man called and said, I'm out of town, I don't come till the weekends, well, you can drop it in the ballot box. So that has helped a lot, and I certainly appreciate that cooperation. But basically, that's about it. Our duties haven't changed much. We're getting ready to help with the tax sale. Any questions that Patrick might have, we make ourselves available to answer those and provide amounts. I did say in here that I provided a list. No, it was not a list. It was a PDF of every delinquent account, and that gives them the opportunity to see who was due for the year of this coming tax sale. So,
Questions for Brenda?
Thank you, Brenda, for your report. And just like the clerk's office, you have so many different things that you do in the treasurer's department and so forth. I understand your comments about adversarial relationships with some of the clients, and it's my feeling that the culture of our country is just becoming more adversarial. So it seems like to me that your department needs to look more completely at how can we do our job either via the mail or via electronically and truly have less waiting. And I know that there's that group that just wants to come and sit, but if you've sat there for an hour, you're already upset.
yes.
And I know it's a complicated situation, but it just seems like to me that the more your department can do electronically, or as you just suggested, putting your tax statements in the lockbox and it's easier for your staff to process it that way and so forth.
Yes.
The more of that you can get done is going to solve this adversarial issue.
We are working on, I say we, it's KCTA and the treasurers, and I have sent Sedgwick County a bunch of information that I had, and Johnson County is working with Sedgwick County and Shawnee County. We need to get a couple of statutes changed. We have the availability to email the tax statements, which possibly could be a substantial savings in the postage. Some people, they live out of state and still own property here. And if they happen to be at that address instead of the one we send the statement to, then there's an issue. If we do the email, that would alleviate that problem. The statute, however, is very clear that we must send them first-class postage. So we are using the bigger counties to move forward and try to get something done with that statute. That could make a huge difference. There's also a statute that says how many times we have to publish. For instance, that insert has to be published 3 times. How many times do we have to print the treasurer's report? How many times do we have to do all of that? And they will also be working on that possibly the availability, put it on our website and publish it one time. That would make a huge difference. I was shocked, to say the least, at the publication bill, but then found out some other counties smaller than Reno County are paying $18,000 to $20,000. And I thought, wow. So
Is that a newspaper or is that your printing costs?
it's actually, it says the Hutch News, but it's Gannett. It's Gannett. There's Gannett, and there's local QI. Sometimes the bill comes in that name, sometimes it's Gannett.
Hey, Patrick, could you investigate whether we have to use the Hutch News?
Newspaper, yeah. I mean,
There's other papers.
I think they're the county paper of record.
No, can we change it? That's the
Can you change
question.
it?
Yeah.
I think it says paper of general circulation.
Well, that's not.
And
Well, they don't have general circulation anymore.
Yeah,
so-
I did some checking on that because I thought I'll use the rural messenger.
Yeah.
You know,
That's not, I mean, that's probably more circulated than the.
It
News,
is.
yes.
It's about 4 times the circulation, if not more, by now. The
Well,
Hutch
let's
News
put that
is.
as an item. Like, can you work with Patrick and?
Yeah, I did call them. I sent them some of our files that they would have to print for us. Unfortunately, their bid came in almost double
Overall
what the Hutch
messenger.
News was.
Okay.
I talked to a gal there named Anita, and we worked on it for several weeks, and
Thanks
My-
for doing that.
yeah,
I think we need to look at that because between utilizing our website to publish that, where they said we can't, so let's look at a qualified newspaper organization that we can do that. We've got to
Okay.
start looking at our cost all the way around.
yeah.
I know that there's 1% of folks that just are tough to get along with when they come in to get tags. I realize that because of different things, that maybe it was the day they had or maybe it was the paperwork or whatever. But I have found that if I can get a connection with whom I'm working with by saying, hey, I'm sorry we were late getting in here and had to wait a little extra longer, but we had some extra paperwork I had to do. You know, how can I help you? Just little connections to the public. It's salesmanship 101
Yes.
that I think, because I have, don't get a lot of connections, so I think that's something to look at. I'm not trying to tell you how, or complaint at all. I'm just,
Yeah.
you mentioned that, and so I thought anytime that we can make a connection with the people we're working with somehow or something, that helps. That's all.
What I've told the frontline girls is, at the bare minimum, when somebody comes in and they start walking, lift your head and acknowledge that you see them and speak to them. So I think we're working on that a lot. I see them doing that more, I should say. So,
What, I'm sure you love coming here and getting suggestions from the commission. So I'll pile on with one suggestion and then we can let you go. I think you, as a suggestion, that if there are certain statutes that create complications for the public, I think it would be worth our time to professionally put that on a piece of paper and then list our state representatives and have them voice their issues with those individuals, because we hear it a lot and our response is generally go talk to the treasurer, because that's her responsibility, and then your response is it's a state statute. Like, I think if our state representatives heard directly from the public and you were to give them access to their contact information so they can call when they're irritated, I think maybe our representatives would pay a little more attention to these issues. So I don't know if you can work with Sandra or something, and just a small, like, here's the statute, here's the issue, here's who you need to call about it. Like, I'm happy to take emails about it, but all I can do is forward it to our representatives, and I don't think that's as effective as hearing directly from the public when they're irritated. So that's my suggestion for you.
okay,
Um,
don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
We
Thank-
can certainly do that.
Thanks for your report. Appreciate you being here. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 10 till 11. 7E, 7E, 7F, 7G, is this all
It's all
Don stuff?
Don, yeah.
Don, why don't you just hit all three of them?
Don Britton, Director of Public Works. Item 7E, this is to award King Construction for the construction of the 69th Avenue Bridge over Cow Creek, located a half-mile west and 2 miles north of the city of Willowbrook. A little bit of history on this. We were awarded the off-system bridge program for the state of an 80-20 contractual contract for this. In other words, on the construction of it, they'll pay 80, we pay 20. We always pay for the engineering. So when I tell you the total cost that the county is going to pay, it'll be for our form of the construction and engineering. So we was awarded that. The county will pay for all engineering for design and 20% of the construction cost. The construction cost for the bridge is estimated at $971,133. Including engineering construction costs, the county will pay for $289,000, and the state will pay for $682,133. It's my recommendation to award this contract to King Construction to build the 69th Avenue Bridge for the sum of $971,133.
I'd make a motion to approve as recommended by the Public Works Director. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hurst. Discussion on this item. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst.
Yes.
Commissioner, excuse me, Sellers.
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen.
Yes. 7F.
7F, this is for an agreement between Moreno County and the engineering firm Kirkland Michael to approve preliminary engineering design services not to exceed $123,681.71 for the high-risk rural roads program. This is a program that the Reno County was awarded, the high-risk program for the western two-thirds of Reno County in July of this year is when we was awarded that. This program replaces all signs within this area with new signs and posts at no cost to the county except for design cost. The estimated cost of this project that the state will pay is $561,000. It is my recommendation to award this contract to the engineering firm Kirk and Michael for the engineering for the HRR program for the sum to not exceed $123,681.71.
What's the total cost of the project?
$561,000 is the cost of replacing the signs and the posts that the state will pay. We will pay the engineering.
It's 20%-ish kind of standard for that kind of work.
This is not an 80-20.
Well, I
We're
mean-
only paying for the engineering. They're paying for all the construction on this sign project.
Sorry, I was spitballing the total project price. And
Oh, I looked at that, and so we was awarded the eastern third of it a year ago. So I was comparing what they was charging on the price of that project compared to this one, and it was just about the same. So that must be kind of where they come up with their figures. But I looked at that too, because if it was going to be much different, then I was going to be giving them a call. So I found it reasonable.
Okay.
This western two-thirds is a lot bigger area, so I would imagine that it was going to cost more, which it has. The HRR for the eastern one-third, that was for $365,246, and the engineering was $80,687, just for a reference.
Chairman, I would move that we approve the engineering contract.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hurst. Discussion. I've noticed the signs in the eastern half. They look nice. They look. Looks like we're doing good work. I also noticed we're putting a lot of holes in the ground as a.
And
as a
that's
utility
not
company.
us.
No, I'm not
That's-
saying it is. I think you're keeping the locate guys pretty busy,
Yeah.
or they are. But roll call, please.
Mr. Hurst.
Yes.
Mr. Sellers.
Yes.
Mr. Friesen.
Yes. 7G. Go on.
7G, this is for an agreement between Reno County and the engineering firm JEO Consulting Group to provide plans for the Woody Seat Bridge deck repairs. The Woody Seat Bridge was selected to be part of the KDOT cost share program in conjunction with the City of Hutchinson portion of repairs to the Woody Seat Freeway just north of the Woody Seat Bridge. The cost estimate for the Woody Seat Bridge deck repair is $1,412,000, and KDOT would pay $600,000 of that. It's my recommendation to award this contract to the engineering firm of JEO Consulting Group to provide plans for the Woody Seat Bridge deck repair for the sum of $69,450.
And this project, I'm fuzzy on Woody Seat, where that is. Like, is that the avenue? Where's that at?
The Woody Seat Bridge is the large 4-lane highway bridge over the Arkansas River. That's the county's.
Okay, so
The
there's a
portion-
bridge, and then I'm thinking of the project.
And then the project north of that,
North
that
of
the
that.
city is, that I had them come in on this grant to try to get it. So that will go up to, I don't know if that goes up to F or whatever, but it's a mill and overlay of their road, remove that center island piece, and then a ramp off that. That's all a part of this project.
Okay.
And some storm sewer stuff. It's not a part of the roundabout project that they're still trying to get money for or decide what to do on that.
Okay.
This grant was for a total of $1.5 million, and I thought, why not bring the city in on it and try to get it all instead of just a portion of it? Because if I had a project for $1.4 million, and you always apply like 50-50, then I'd get $700,000. Well, I wanted to try to get it all, so brought the city in on it, and we got it all.
I appreciate Don's work with this, along with Gary and the Hutchinson City Council, because this has been an eyesore, a problem for a long time with regard to Woody Seat, and needed to be done. And the fact that we can go together to save some money and get the project done was worth a lot of extra effort that Don put in to get that done. So from that standpoint, I move to approve 7G as presented by staff.
Commissioner Hurst moves. A second. I'll second that. And these are all competitive grants, right? They don't just give them to you.
No.
You gotta compete with every other county in the state.
On the Woody Seat, when I made some phone calls.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Thank you for your efforts on that and the fruits of those efforts here. And you know, we get to spend $70,000 and state puts in a lot more than that, so thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hurst.
Yes.
Mr. Sellers.
Yes.
Mr. Friesen.
Yes.
Commissioner? If I might mention, we've got a couple commissioners here that unaware of that was 2 years ago or 3 that worked on this Arkansas River Bridge, and there was some damage underneath on the drainage. Correct, Don? You can fill that in. But we spent quite a bit of money to do that, and then we're unable to get the rest of it done.
This that we're gonna do now on this bridge will probably make it to the term of its life. So in about between 15 and 20 years, whoever's in my position, the county commissioners better plan on how to build a $12 million bridge. Because this is the second major deck repair this will have, and that's about all you do. And if this would last 20 years, that makes that bridge 87 years old. So just to put a new deck on that old of a bridge, I probably wouldn't recommend that. So you're talking about probably a $12 million bridge at that time.
Thank you, Don. County Administrator report.
For my report today, I just have the 2 items on here, the monthly department reports and financial reports. The monthly department reports are for aging, appraiser, automotive, community corrections, the district attorney, emergency management, and health department. Do you have any questions for anything that was in the reports?
I have none.
None.
Then financials, the financial report Right now, this is through October of this year, and overall, our budgets are getting stretched. The budget authority is, but we're doing good on cash. Our revenues are high, and I don't see any of the funds having trouble with budget authority overall. They're all increasing in cash over what they began the year with, so most of them, our revenue is more than the expenditures. So that'll help us when we do the 2024 budget, when we start that in a couple months, that'll help. Do you guys have any questions on any of the numbers in here? That's all I had.
Thank you, Randy. Commissioner comments? We're going to start with Commissioner Hurst.
Attended the EMS meeting with Randy, administrator, and I don't know whether he wants to comment about that or not. We did see the full ridership, the calls they have to make increasing, and there are plans and within the budget, and it's doing better than expected, I think, Randy, correct?
Yes, what they're charging us, what the county pays is under budget, and it should end the year under budget. So they're doing really good this year on their actual collections of revenues.
Attended the HEAL meeting this week, and HEAL stands for Healthy Eating, Active Lifestyle, and it's one of those programs that is necessary to maintain and to keep going, and it's just all volunteer people that meet, and that has to do with being able to get grants for the health department. And if Carla wants to comment about that, probably at some point in time, but that has to do with a program that needs to be kept into place, and it's not an expense item as such at all, but something that's required. And yesterday afternoon, until I had an electricity problem going out with, it also interfered with my internet connection, that attended a NACO request from the Kansas Association of Counties for the NACO Entrepreneur and Small Business seminar that they had, or informational gathering from NACO. And there was 8 counties involved in our session. There's another session today, but Jackson Swear was also on this. And it was just more or less an informational meeting to see what the counties were doing and what their the questions that they asked, how they were handling them with regards to the entrepreneurial activity and development of small businesses in the counties. That's all.
Commissioner Sellers?
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate the new commissioners-elect that are with us this morning. Congratulations on your election. It would appear that this digitizing that we started a year ago, Randy,
I think it was either at the end of last year or the beginning of this year.
is really starting to be very effective. Would you, as administrator, concur that this is going to help us in the future?
This will help with, we're right now register deeds records, but it's HR and other people's records, but it's a great hire. The employee down there in IT is doing a superb job, so it is a good hire.
That's what I'm hearing, and you just can't keep all this paper. It's I did think the chairman had a good idea about the department checking the redundancy of the system. I think that's one of the things that probably somebody like myself would say, well, it's probably going to work. And Daniel's saying we ought to prove
Usually
it's gonna
doesn't
work.
work.
I think that was an excellent suggestion. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioners Sellers. A few things on my list. One is I'll leave that for last here. I've talked to Randy briefly about our AP approval process. I know you guys both have citations from the clerk's office on your desk, and that. And I think Randy's researching with Patrick on what the rules are, and maybe if there's a more streamlined approach, because it seems like it's a little clunky today, and so with an additional 2 commissioners being added, I think it may be even more cumbersome if we don't streamline it a little bit. So they're going to work on that and give us something back. I attended the Stepping Up Council meeting, which is a quarterly meeting which focuses on the intersection of mental health and our law enforcement efforts, and it continues to just amaze me. Amaze is usually a positive word. It's not great, the situation that we have with both residents that have mental illness and a significant amount of transient individuals that they're traveling through our county and then get picked up by law enforcement and then get basically permanently housed in our county and costing the county taxpayers hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year in costs associated with operating our jail or law enforcement. And it's a very difficult process to address, but it's also a very costly one that I think needs more attention. There's not a lot of great answers yet. There's a lot of great people working on it, but one of the more concerning issues is that we have certain individuals that are waiting for transport to the mental health facility in Larned and are actually housed in our jail longer than the likely term of any jail time they may be assessed associated with their crime. And so I keep bringing it up. It's unfortunate that we don't have a solution yet for that, but it's another area where I think the public and private sectors could intersect a little bit, because the private sector is frustrated with our taxes, but a lot of those taxes are going towards this problem, and if we were to work on solving it together, we may be more successful. But I think this idea that we're just gonna we don't have a place for people that are mentally ill besides the jail is a really unfortunate situation for our community that we need to work on. And so certainly the other 2 commissioners that are here are welcome to come to those meetings as well, and it's very eye-opening. But I wanted to point that out again. The canvass that occurred on Thursday as well went without a hitch, as Donna mentioned. I'm mainly saying this for Commissioner Sellers and the new commissioners here, since you weren't there, but no one from the public was there. There's a lot of the election volunteers were there, and it went well. We did streamline the process from an agenda perspective, and we did something a little new that I don't think had been done before. We created an official agenda that had what we were going to do. It listed the number of ballots that we planned to either count or not count. And while it didn't get to the public soon enough because it was a new format, I think we're intending to get that out to the public ahead of time so they're aware of what we intend to do, or what the clerk's office is recommending that the canvass board do. So we'll be doing that in the future. And then the last thing I had was this afternoon we are doing a commissioner orientation with the 3 new commissioners, and I wanted to make sure if the Commissioner Hurst and Commissioner Sellers, if you have anything that you haven't communicated with Randy or me, you can either do that now or talk to Randy afterwards that you think might be helpful for the new commissioners this afternoon. We'd certainly be willing to make sure we bring that up for them as well. So, any comments on any of that?
So that's not an open meeting?
So we're just having one commissioner there?
Just one commissioner.
Yeah, I thought we were doing a study session if we had if we had more than one commissioner, there'd be a study session. But we're really not talking about county business, we're talking about how we talk about county business, kind of the procedures and policies and just the role of everything. We're not gonna be we're not gonna be really discussing in depth any kind of ongoing projects or budgets or anything. It's just kind of
Well, I was unaware of that
so I guess the answer is no, it's not gonna be open because we're just gonna have limited amount of people there and not really discuss anything.
so I don't have to put it on my calendar then. Okay.
Okay. With that, there's one executive session. I'm going to propose a second executive session. I'll start with 10A. Do you think we could do that in 15, 20 minutes?
We could try.
Okay. 20?
15.
15. All right. We're going to do that in 15. And then the second one, just so the public's aware, I'm going to propose a second session after that related to employee matters that have been brought to light from the child care needs assessment. And I'll ask Patrick to draft that for me. Okay, thanks. So the first executive session, hang on.
What will the proper language be on the second?
I can read it to you. It's a motion to recess an executive session for the discussion of performance of one or more non-elected county personnel.
Okay, that's good enough. You can make the motion later.
Yep. Executive session here. Sorry, it's coming up. First executive session, I'd motion to adjourn into executive session until 11:30 with the governing body, the county administrator, public works director, and the county councilor for preliminary discussions on potential acquisition of land related to a sewer district or districts. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hurst. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers?
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes.
if you're ready.
There you go.
Okay. I'd like to move for the commission to recess an executive session until 11:45 for the purpose of discussing a subject of performance of one or more non-elected county personnel with the executive session justified by the need to discuss in confidence personnel matters of non-elected personnel with the governing body, county administrator, county counselor, and director of the health department in attendance. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hurst. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst.
Yes.
What?
Commissioner Seller.
Hang on. I did that out of order. Like, I know there may be a dissenting vote potentially. I should ask for comment before we
Okay.
roll call.
I'll be voting no on this matter because I think we're doing a knee-jerk reaction to a presentation that was made today that should be given to the county administrator to check into before it comes to this commission. After the county administrator checks into it, if he feels it's an issue that we need to be involved in, I'll be glad for an executive session, but I think it's premature to do it at this point in time.
So my comments on the motion, I feel it's appropriate given the gravity of the feedback provided, and give, like, I don't disagree with you in whole. I do disagree that it is not appropriate at this time to provide Randy a little bit of feedback, and Carla feedback on what we just heard. There were comments related to the county commission staff, or the county's staff performance on regulations, including complete contempt for the rules. That is not my comment. That is a quote from the researcher that spent the last 6 months researching this issue and indicating that Reno County had the worst enforcement of these issues in the state, and I think it warrants a 15-minute conversation with county administration on the issue, and I don't disagree that we need to allow the process to be handled by the administrator thereafter.
I will say that I thought I learned a great deal from the Chamber's annual meeting this year, and that will be a reason for my vote.
With that, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst.
No?
Commissioner Sellers.
No.
Commissioner Friesen.
Yes. Motion fails.
Mr. Chairman,
1 to
I'd
2.
like to make the motion that the county administrator be instructed to go through proper channels and to investigate the comment that was made today and to bring back his findings to the commission.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. I think it'd be appropriate to put a time frame on that.
The first meeting in December would be a good time.
You have a problem with that?
No.
Okay. Motion was amended by friendly amendment to add a deadline of the first meeting in December. Any other discussion? I have a couple comments. Like, I'm okay with your points of view that it's really disappointing that you can't take 15 minutes on an issue that is the most important issue in Reno County, to talk with our county administrator. We don't have time to talk with each other outside of this meeting, and for a 15-minute conversation to stifle that conversation is extremely disappointing to me. I am pissed off at what I heard today, and I don't want to just dump all that on Randy without the two of you providing a balancing feedback. And I'm going to dump it on Randy when our next meeting is, and I think you guys are unfortunately allowing that conversation to kind of happen without the voice of the entire commission, and I think that's an unfortunate, like you call it a knee jerk, like it's a knee jerk to not have a 15-minute conversation. So disappointed on that, and I can't believe you didn't hear I feel like you didn't hear what just happened the last hour.
We heard.
Well, I don't feel like you're doing much about it.
I move we adjourn.
Well, that's out of order. There's a
I am a
motion
little
on the table.
disappointed that Commissioner Sellers and I weren't invited into the.
That's out of order too,
Commissioner.
because we have a motion on the table. You get,
Okay, all right.
so there's a motion on the table. It's been properly seconded. We need a roll call on that motion.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers?
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes. We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.